Hey y'all, it has been a little over a year since I've had Israel, and I thought that I would finally share my birth story. So, buckle up, here we go. So, I guess we can start back to when we first found out that I was pregnant. We were living in St. Louis at the time, and Isaac and I already knew, even before we were pregnant, that we wanted to do a home birth. So we were on the search for a midwife, and we found an amazing midwife in St. Louis. And the plan was that we were going to have Israel in our home in St. Louis, and we were excited. We had several appointments with her, and then out of nowhere, God called us to Mobile. So with that, we had to change our birth plan completely, start all the way over with a new midwife. When we got to Mobile, we made plans to still do a home birth because that was a desire of my heart, that I didn't want a hospital birth. I just really wanted a home birth. And so whenever we got there, we found a midwife, and there was a lot of back and forth with a housing situation at the time. We tried to buy a house 4 different times, and all of those houses fell through. So you can't really have a home birth if you don't have a house to live in. So thankfully, our midwife had the option that we could come to her birthing center. Birthing cottage is what she called it. And so that was the plan. We were going to go to her birth cottage and have our baby there. So throughout my entire pregnancy, every appointment, Israel was doing completely fine. We never had any issues. I never had any issues. It was literally like I was made to be a mom. Like I was made to be pregnant. I was made to do this, and I wasn't really ever sick during pregnancy. Like I was rocking the thing. And when labor rolled around, I went into labor at my parents' house. We were living with my parents at the time, and I labored at home for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, we should probably head to the cottage because I've never been a mom before, so I don't really know what this is supposed to feel like, but I don't want to accidentally have my baby like on the way there. So we loaded up in the car, drove to the cottage, and my doula met us there too, which I just want to say my doula was my saving grace. The entire labor process, she was my rock, literally. Labor in general, like I just recommend a doula because mine literally held me down. So we labored there, and it was just a really, really rough time, but I was rocking it. Like that's the best way I know how to say. Like once again, I felt like I was made for this, and yes, it was painful because I was doing it all natural, no medication, but I still felt like, let's go. Like I can do this. I'm here for it. I was taking every contraction and just embracing it. Like I wasn't trying to fight it. I even had like encouraging note cards that I had all around the room that was like, this pain has a purpose, and I was just doing it. And there was a point that I was like so far into labor, I was just like dancing through my contractions. So I was laboring for a while. I don't know how many hours at this point, but the midwife kept checking on Israel, and she kept saying he's not moving down into position. And at that point, my water was still intact, and it just seemed as if he was just stuck in there forever. And it was really discouraging because I felt like I was making so much progress, and it just was like kept hitting brick wall after brick wall. So at that point, I had ordered a birth pool and I had my birth plan. Like, I always envisioned Izzy coming into the world in water, just relaxing, the most natural. And so at that point, when I was struggling, just wanted to get some relief, I asked to get into the birth pool. And for some reason, my expectation of how he was going to come wasn't the reality of what was happening in that situation. Because all throughout my labor, I could not lay down. Like, it hurt so bad to lay down. So I stood up over the bed the entire time that I was in labor. And it was rough. Like, my body was feeling it. My doula, my mom, Isaac, they were trying to put food into me and liquids and all the things. And so my birth team was solid. Like, they were keeping me strong. So after however many hours of laboring, there came a point where the midwife kept checking me, and she was telling me that he had not moved down into position yet. And I was getting very discouraged because it felt like I was progressing and doing the thing, and then it was like, but he's still not moving down. So she kept telling me that I was such and such centimeters, and I was like, oh, okay, well then, like, I should be almost having the baby. Like, I think I was 7.5 at that point. Well, my water was still intact, and my doula kept asking me, like, is there anything that you feel like is stressing you out, or like you feel like is hindering you from your labors, because it seems as if it's slowing down. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, well, it's Christmas Eve, and I had a birth photographer there, birth videographer. I had all these people, a doula, a midwife, her assistant, my mom, like Isaac's family from out of town, like all of these factors, like people are waiting on me to have this baby. I didn't know what it was. And so my midwife checked me, and she said that I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. So at 10, you have your baby. So I'm expecting, okay, like this is happening any minute. I began to feel pressure down low, and because of that, my midwife instructed me to start pushing. So she was basically telling me how to push, showing me how to push, and trying to get in the rhythm of what that felt like. I think because I was pushing so long, I began to wear myself out and become even more exhausted. As you can imagine, I'm tired. I think this was, at this point, 18 hours had passed, and I was exhausted. And I went to my midwife, and I was like, yo, what's the deal? Like what's going on? And she told me, she said, I just think that if it were me, I would transfer to a hospital. And I was just like kind of shocked, because you never hear transfer whenever you're having a home birth unless there's a problem. If there's a problem with the baby, if the heart rate is dropping, whatever it is, or there's a problem with the mom. And yes, I was exhausted, but I never in a million years thought I would be the one to transfer to a hospital. Like, I was killing it. I was staying strong. I was dancing through my contractions. And she told me that it would probably be best to transfer to a hospital. And in that moment, that was the first time I cried the entire labor, because I just felt so defeated. And honestly, I just felt like she had given up on me, and I didn't want to stay there and do it anymore if my own midwife didn't believe in me. So I just stopped, went to Isaac, cried some more, and we just decided, okay, I think it's just best for everybody if we kind of regroup. We drive to the nearest hospital and have the baby at the hospital, and so I can kind of get some relief. And mind you, I'm 9.5 centimeters dilated, so we got to get there quick if we're gonna have this baby at the hospital. So we jump in the car, and I'm having contractions all the way there. So we get there. I get in the bed, they check me, and I'm only 7.5 centimeters dilated. Yeah, that's what I was like too. I was confused. I said, oh no, my midwife told me that I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. We were about to have this baby. They said, oh no, baby, you staying in that bed. You're 7.5 centimeters dilated. I was all kinds of confused. Isaac was trying to fight them too, saying, no, she's almost there. We've been doing this a while. And of course, I was only 7.5 centimeters dilated. I tell them, please bring me an epidural because I'm just trying to get some rest. So the guy comes in, get the epidural, and I literally fist pump the doctor or the anesthesiologist because I'm like, thank you so much for this relief. Like, this is all I needed in my life because I finally came back to myself because I was just in so much pain. My water finally broke soon after I got the epidural, and that was when labor began to pick up. I progress all the way to 10, and I start pushing. I push Izzy out in 45 minutes, and we're all so very happy. Like, everything is happy. It's Christmas Eve, and we finally have our baby boy. The doctor's still in the room, and of course, my mom is in there, and she asked the doctor, hey, like, did Naomi tear? Because that was one of my main concerns, especially having a natural birth. I wanted to be sure that that wasn't going to happen. And so the doctor's like, oh no, like, she's fine, like, everything's good. So we're like, all right, like, we go home, we're enjoying having a baby, and I have a really high pain tolerance. So I'm just thinking the pain that I'm feeling is what postpartum feels like. I'm a first-time mom, so I don't really know what having a baby is supposed to feel like, but I just assumed that you're supposed to be in the amount of pain that I was in. So I had ice pack pads that I was sitting on that every postpartum mama talks about, like, use those ice packs, use that spray, like, use that peri bottle, like, all the things. I'm just like, okay, I'm doing it. But I was going through them like every 5 minutes, it felt like. I was like, give me a new pad, like, give me a new ice pack. Like, I was struggling. It was hard for me to walk, which I wasn't trying to walk anyway, but it was just very, very uncomfortable. And I think it was like 3 days postpartum, I got up to use the bathroom, and I was just in so much pain. I started crying. I like started hyperventilating. My mom basically heard me, came in and like caught me and like walked me back to the bed. And I just was like, oh, that's just my hormones because my milk is coming in. Like, I had no idea what was happening. Fast forward 2 more days later, I go to the bathroom again, and this time I was just like, I was crying so bad. My mom literally told me, she said, it sounded like you were in labor again. And so all that I wanted to do was just sit in a warm bath or just try to get relief somehow. And so then my mom was like, I don't think this is normal. Like, as the days go on, you should be feeling less and less pain, not more and more pain. And so she said, let's call your midwife and have her come back to our house and check on you because I don't think this is right. So the midwife comes over, she checks, and she says, Naomi, you have a laceration that should have been sewn up or sutured at right after you delivered Israel. And I was so confused because the doctor told me I didn't tear, and it was just a swirl of confusion and emotions. At this point, it's New Year's Eve, and I'm just thinking we're about to shoot some fireworks. I mean, not really. I'm kidding. Like, I'm literally still laying in bed, but that's not how I imagine my New Year's going. We end up going to the emergency room on New Year's Eve, and they tell me, because I'm just trying to get answers at this point. Like, why did my doctor tell me that I didn't tear when I did? all the things, all the questions. So I'm just seeking to understand, asking these doctors and nurses that are taking care of me, what is going on with me? And all that they can tell me is this is a disaster. So they start asking Isaac questions like, has Naomi had a fever? Has Naomi been showing weird signs? Like all these weird questions. And I'm like, am I okay? Like, can y'all talk to me? Like, what's wrong with me? And they said, you're severely infected. We have to get antibiotics flushing through you right now. Like, you could have died from this, basically, is what they told me. And you have to go into emergency surgery first thing in the morning because we don't have doctors that are on call at the moment because it's New Year's Eve. And they tell me that they're basically going to have to do reconstructive surgery on me because I'm torn from top to bottom. So we had Israel with us at the hospital, obviously because I'm nursing him. In those first couple of days and first week, I mean, that is so important to have your baby with you. You're nourishing them, doing all of those things, and the bond. And so with going into surgery, I knew that it would be hard to have Izzy still at the hospital there. So my parents had to come and get him. I had to pump in between being in and out of surgery. But basically on New Year's Day, I had a reconstructive surgery, and I was in the hospital for a few days after that, and I didn't have my baby with me. So that was really hard, but we got through it, and literally when I came out of surgery, I said, I feel like a new person, mentally, spiritually, physically, and I was just ready. Like, I was like, what the enemy thought he could steal, like, he's got another thing coming. And so after that, recovery was really hard because I thought that I would feel better after the problem was fixed, but I never truly felt better. Like, I was in constant pain. Obviously the pain wasn't as severe, but it was still there. And I was trying to get back into shooting weddings and my job, and I had to stop. Like, Isaac had to come and rescue me because I was in so much pain. And so I was like, I like kept calling the doctor saying, like, is this normal? Like, am I supposed to still be in this much pain? And they're like, oh yeah, like, that's normal. That's part of it. Well, I finally was like, I don't want that to be normal for me. Like, I want to seek to find an answer. So I made an appointment with a specialist, and basically when she looked at me and said, they didn't do everything that they needed to do in the first surgery, so you're gonna have to have a second surgery to fix this, or it could take up to a year to not be in pain anymore, maybe even longer, which I was not expecting that at all. Like, I think that I'm recovering, and she's telling me that this could take up to a year or longer to even get back to normal everyday things that you did before, like exercise and that kind of thing. So she tells me that, and I'm just like, ooh, but I still have a peace. Like, this whole process, like, there's been peace over everything. And so at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to squeeze a surgery in between weddings that I'm flying out of state to shoot. So we scheduled the second surgery, and after that surgery, I didn't realize, through the recovery process, I didn't realize how much pain that I truly was in and how much that helped me. And I didn't realize that I was almost like numb for like the first 5 months of Izzy's life, and things that I would normally care about, I just kind of walked around like, like, it's truly just because I was trying to survive, and I was constantly in pain, and was just pressing through because I wanted to be such a good mom and do everything that I could to be strong for Izzy, be strong for Isaac. So I truly didn't feel 100% healed until 6 weeks after my second surgery, which was in May of 2021. Once we moved to Indiana in August of 2021, that was when the layers of emotions started hitting, because like I said, I was numb. I wasn't feeling all of the stuff that happened to me during the birth, after the birth, all of those things. Like, I didn't realize that I hadn't processed those yet. And so there would just be days I would cry and I would be sad and I would be asking God, like, why did this happen to me? I would just have so many questions, and I'm still working through some of those, but I mean, even just like the thought of having another baby was a big thing for me, because I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. I want, so do I even want to have another kid? And so the Lord has just really been helping my heart. He spoke to me one night and said, Naomi, like, I can do way more for you in one single moment in my presence than having thousands of hours of counselors. And I'm not saying that counseling is bad, but the Holy Spirit is just like, has been my comforter and my counselor through this time. And I'm just so thankful to always have that. And that He says in His word, like, He hasn't left us as orphans. And I have truly felt that. And having Israel is the best thing literally that's ever happened to me. And He brings us so much joy. And the ultimate revelation that I've gotten through all of this is that as a woman, we were created to bring heaven to earth through our children. And the enemy wanted Izzy dead, and he wanted me dead, and he didn't want me to have any more kids after this. And so I think it's just so cool that what comes out of us will one day crush the enemy's head. And that's my honor. Like, I'm not scared to have kids anymore, like, after having Izzy, because I feel that weight and I feel that honor of, oh, well, if I have another kid, they're gonna rise up and crush the enemy's head just like Izzy's going to. So I have had so many people in my corner through this whole entire process, rooting me on, praying for me, and I seriously could not have gotten through any of it, birth, pregnancy, surgeries, all of that, without my people, walking through it with me every step of the way. So I just want to say thank you to the people who walked through that with me, to my mom, who literally brought me breakfast in bed every day, my husband, who never left my side every step of the way. Couldn't do it without my crew. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. At all of my prenatal checkups, when I would go to an OB, they would tell me that Izzy was measuring larger, and if I wasn't careful, that he was going to be a 14-pound baby at birth. And he came out 7 pounds 3 ounces. The biggest thing that I've taken away from this whole experience is that whether you have a home birth, you have a hospital birth, you have to trust God with your plan no matter what. Just trust yourself, trust your body, and lean into Jesus. That's kind of where I've landed with all of this. So many people have still had questions about, are you okay? Like, what happened? Like, we heard. And so I just kind of wanted to share what happened. So thanks for listening, and I love you guys. Bye.